The old man died mid-confession. The priest woke up knowing every forbidden rite. The confessional was designed as a container for the unbearable weight of what people have done. A small wooden space, a screen, a voice, and its absolution. The whole architecture of it built to receive the darkest materials of a human life and return the person to themselves. Lighter, cleaner, sealed. It does not protect the priest. Father Anselm Goss had been hearing confessions for 32 years in a parish that covered a stretch of rural Suffolk, and he had received into his keeping an accumulated inventory of human failure that he carried. By training and vocation, with profound care and without transfer, he heard them. He held them. He offered what the sacrament offered. He did not take anything home. The old man who came to him on a Wednesday afternoon in November was not familiar. He was thin and very old, and he moved with a specific quality of someone carrying a weight they have decided is no longer theirs to hold. He entered the confessional. He began to speak. He died before he finished. What he transferred in the moment between the last word and the last breath was not the weight of what he had done. It was the entire library, every rite, every secret, every incantation. Father Goss woke on the confessional floor with a grimoire in his mind and something waiting at the parish door to reclaim it. Father Anselm Goss had been the priest of St. Cuthbert's, Harrow Fen, for 19 years. The parish was rural and aging, and its congregation numbered, on a good Sunday, 47. He was 58, compact, with the specific economy of movement of someone who has spent decades in small spaces doing careful work. Vestry, confessional, the narrow aisle between choir stalls and side chapel. He was not, by his own assessment, a man given to crisis of faith or mystical encounter. He had entered the priesthood with a clear understanding of what it required and had maintained that understanding through 32 years with a commitment he would not have called heroic because it had not, until November, required heroism. The old man arrived at 3:15 p.m. on a Wednesday without an appointment, entering the church from the side door that was always left unlocked during daylight hours. Anselm was in the sacristy reviewing the Sunday rota when he heard the door, and came out to find the man already seated in the front pew, not kneeling, not praying, but seated with the posture of someone who has arrived somewhere they have been traveling toward for a very long time and is simply resting for a moment before the final step. He was, Anselm estimated, in his 90s. He had the quality of age that is not decline, but compression. Every feature reduced to its essential form, the face a precise map of its own structure, the eyes clear with the specific clarity that sometimes accompanies the final weeks of a long life. He wore a dark coat and clean shoes, and nothing else that Anselm could identify as notable except a ring on his right hand. Silver, set with a stone that was not quite black, which caught the church's thin November light in a way that produced, at certain angles, a color Anselm did not have a name for. He asked if he could make a confession. Anselm said yes. This was, of course, always yes. They went to the confessional. Anselm took his side of the screen. The old man settled. The particular silence of the confessional, different in quality from any other silence in a church building, denser, more expectant. settled around them both. "Bless me, Father," the old man said, "for I have sinned. I have not confessed in 67 years. I will not be making a full accounting of those years today, not because I am unprepared, but because what I have come to transfer is not sin in the sense you have been trained to receive it. It is knowledge. It is the kind of knowledge that does not leave when its carrier leaves. I need it to go to someone before I die, and I need that someone to have received it through the confessional seal, so that it is protected." Anselm asked, with the measured calm of 32 years of confessional experience, what the man meant by knowledge. "I am," said the old man, "the last surviving high priest of an order you will not have heard of by its current name. The order has been in continuous operation for 400 years. Its practices include rites of considerable power and considerable danger, and its doctrinal content represents an alternative theological tradition that the Church would classify as," he paused, considering, "antithetical. I have been the keeper of these rites for the last 50 years. I am the last keeper. I have no successor. The order has been sending people to find me for 3 weeks, and I have been," another pause, "mobile. I am now no longer mobile. I have, I think, approximately 20 minutes. Anselm asked what he intended. "To transfer the content to you. The process is involuntary on your part once I begin. I should tell you this clearly because I believe in informed consent up to the limits of what is practical. You will experience it as a rapid," he began. What Anselm experienced for the following 9 minutes was not language. It arrived in the register before language, in the place where understanding exists before it finds words. A cascade of structured information, dense and hierarchical and precise, settling into him. Not like learning, but like remembering something that had always been there, but had been stored until now. Somewhere he had no access to. He felt it arriving in layers. First, the architectural structure of a theological system he did not recognize. Then the rites themselves, each one complete with mechanics, materials, proper names of entities, contraindications. Then the historical record, 4 centuries of the order's operations, its practitioners, its outcomes. Then the names, the true names, 47 entities across 5 categories of classification, each with its proper appellative and its invocation sequence and the specific conditions under which the invocation would be answered. Then, one final name, the highest name. The name at the center of the order's entire tradition, which arrived in Anselm's mind with the specific gravity of a stone dropped into very deep water. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but definitive. Permanent. The kind of thing that, once known, reorganizes the structure of everything else around it. The old man stopped speaking. Anselm sat on his side of the screen and felt the weight of what had just been added to him, not painfully, not terrifyingly, but with an unmistakable clarity about the difference between himself 5 minutes ago and himself now. The difference was the difference between a house with 1 room and a house with 4 floors, of which he had previously been aware of only the ground. He spoke through the screen. "Are you?" There was no answer. He left his side of the confessional and opened the other door, and the old man was in the posture of the dead. Not dramatic, not distressed. Simply the specific absence that distinguishes a living body from one that has just stopped. He was still seated. His hands were folded. The ring on his right hand had gone entirely dark. The stone showed nothing now, no color, no catch of light, as though it had discharged whatever it had been holding. Anselm called the appropriate services. He waited for them. He sat in the front pew where the old man had rested and felt, in his mind, the new weight of 400 years of forbidden knowledge, present, detailed, scrupulously organized, and available with the complete clarity of something that had been designed to be used. He knew, from the transferred content, what he was now: a living grimoire, the technical term the order used for a body that had received a full transmission. The transfer through the confessional had done exactly what the old man had said it would do: bound the content under the confessional seal, which meant it could not be compelled, extracted, or removed without Anselm's consent. It was, in the order's framework, the most protective available structure for passing the content to an unwilling or uninitiated recipient. He also knew, from the transferred content, what was coming. The order had been looking for the old man for 3 weeks. The order had known, through its own considerable means, where the old man had gone. They would know the transfer had been completed. They would come to St. Cuthbert's, or perhaps already coming. Not to harm Anselm, but to retrieve what had been placed in him, which under the order's law required his consent. His death would not release the content. Only his willing transmission would. He sat in the front pew and considered the choice the old man had forced on him with what Anselm was beginning to feel, with a mixture of grief and genuine reluctant admiration, was considerable care. The confessional seal protected the content. The content itself was now his, present, accessible, entirely functional. The highest name, which he felt in the structure of his mind like a load-bearing beam, was available to him. The rites were available to him. 400 years of accumulated power sealed in him by an old man in a dark coat who had arrived at his side door because he needed someone to hold it, and who had chosen a priest because the confessional was the one container he knew would hold. He could keep it. He could carry it in the silence that the seal required, and it would stay in him, and the order would not be able to compel its release. And eventually, in 30 years, 40, however long a careful man in good health could manage, it would die with him. Or he could use it. The rites were extraordinary. He knew this now from the inside. He knew the highest name. He knew what calling it would do, what it could do for him, what it could do to the order when they arrived, what it had done for the practitioners who had used it across 4 centuries, and what it had cost them. He knew the cost down to its particulars. He sat in the pew until the ambulance came. He answered their questions. He watched them remove the old man's body with an efficiency that felt, against the weight of the last 40 minutes, almost brutal in its practicality. He signed the forms. He thanked them. He went to the vestry. He sat at his desk. The November light was going. The church was quiet around him in the specific way it was quiet when he was the only living person in it. A quality of space he had always found deeply comforting, and which now had, beneath it, a second quality he was still learning to hear. He looked at his hands. He thought about the old man who had arrived and rested in the front pew and then done what he had come to do with the precision of someone who had been planning it for longer than Anselm had been a priest. He thought about the order which would arrive when it arrived, and which would be, by the order's own doctrine, unable to compel what the confessional seal protected. He thought about what it would mean to use the rites, what it would mean not to. He thought about the highest name. He had been a priest for 32 years. He had kept 32 years of the heaviest materials a human life produces, and he had carried them without transfer, without collapse, without the kind of spiritual contamination that the work required him to hold at careful distance. He was carrying something different now. The last of the November light left the vestry window. Father Anselm Goss looked down at his hands, which were the same hands they had always been, steady, careful, accustomed to small spaces and careful work, and the thought arrived in his mind with the specific quality of something that had not been there a moment before, which was the thought of how to begin. His eyes, when he looked up from his hands to the vestry mirror, had changed. Not dramatically, not impossibly. In the specific subtle way that eyes change when what lives behind them has been. Not replaced, not displaced, but given something enormous to hold, and has begun, very quietly, to let it reorganize itself. The color of the confessional wood. He looked at his reflection for a long time. His mouth, almost without his awareness, formed the first syllable. He was given no choice about the transfer. The old man had been clear about this, informed consent up to the limits of what is practical, and whatever one thinks of the ethics of placing 400 years of forbidden knowledge into an uninitiated person without their full agreement. The old man had at least been honest about the fact that he was doing it. What Anselm was given a choice about was what to do with it afterward. And this is the question I cannot resolve, not because the answer is unclear, but because both answers are terrible in different ways. To carry it in silence, sealed, for 30 or 40 years, being the only living container of knowledge that was designed to be used, carrying the weight of 47 entity names and 400 years of rites, holding the highest name like a stone in a room where no one else can feel its gravity. That would be one kind of martyrdom. The other kind is the one the mirror showed him. I want to be careful about the savage edge here, because I genuinely don't think Anselm deserves it. He was doing his job. He heard a confession. He could not have refused the transfer once it began, and the old man, who was dying anyway, and who had chosen with considerable deliberation, had given him the most protected container available. But he sat in the pew after the ambulance left. He went to the vestry. He sat at his desk. He thought about the highest name. He did not pick up the phone. He did not call anyone. He did not walk to the church door or the car park or anywhere that was outside the building in its silence. He sat with the name in his mind. And his mouth, eventually, formed the first syllable. That moment. That is the one I keep returning to in the dark. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Ilara, and I am your whisperer. I'll be here, waiting for you next time. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more. This has been Karma Quietly Whispers. See you soon.